Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're actually unpacking a text that scholars call the absolute heart of ontology in Theravada Buddhism. It's called the Nidāna Vagga. But don't worry, we aren't just looking at dusty historical relics today. Instead, we're exploring a remarkably pure, rational system of cause and effect. Think of it as a razor-sharp compass that's incredibly useful for navigating our chaotic, information-overloaded modern world. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the core of ontology, move into the law of causality, explore the psychology of the endless cycle, look at some warnings for modern society, and finally wrap up with the compass of wisdom. All right, Section 1, the core of ontology. So, this text is nestled deep within Volume 8 of the Sutta Piṭaka, and to really understand it, we need to clear up a major misconception right off the bat. You see, in modern Thai, the word Nidāna is often used to mean a fairy tale or a bedtime story. But here, it means the exact opposite. It literally translates to the root cause or the origin of phenomena. This text is definitely not a myth. It's a laser-focused, rigorous investigation into the exact architecture of how systems function and, crucially, why suffering originates in the first place. Moving right along to Section 2, the law of causality. The fundamental tool used throughout this text is Paṭicca-samuppāda, which translates to dependent origination. And what it does is completely dismantle the idea of a random, unpredictable universe, using one very specific number, 12. These 12 elements represent a strictly mechanical chain reaction, starting with ignorance at the very top and cascading all the way down to aging and death. The text essentially proves that human suffering isn't some random curse. Actually, scratch that. It's more like it reveals that suffering has a highly predictable 12-step architecture. So the crucial point is that this entire philosophical revolution boils down to one incredibly famous, almost physics-like formula. When this exists, that comes to be. Because this arises, that arises. I mean, think about how radical this was for the ancient world. It completely bypassed the need for a creator god or any kind of magic, explaining existence through strict universal law. The logic is simple. Remove the cause, like pull the plug on ignorance, for example, and that entire chain reaction of suffering just simply stops. Now, ancient scholars cemented this pure rationalism in a famous commentary using 4 really heavy-hitting terms. First is tethata, meaning exactly how things are. Then avitatthata, their absolute infallibility. Next is ananathata, meaning the law doesn't just randomly change its nature. And finally, idappacayata, which is specific conditionality. Together, they form the ultimate domino effect. They're loudly declaring that there is no magic soul running the show behind the scenes, just strict, undeniable cause and effect. Which brings us to Section 3, Psychology of the Endless Cycle. So this presents us with a really deep psychological problem. How do you break a cycle that has no beginning? The cycle of samsara, or rebirth, stretches back way further than the human mind can possibly process. And to break a habit ingrained that deeply in the human ego, pure logic just kind of fails. You need a massive psychological shock to the system. And this brilliantly illustrates how the Buddha delivered that shock. He went massive. He stated that the tears you've shed over countless lifetimes of suffering are actually greater than the waters of the 4 oceans. I mean, wow, that is a lot of existential dread. That's literally more tears than going through a terrible breakup on an infinite loop. But you have to understand, this wasn't meant to spark some sort of metaphysical obsession with past lives. It was a highly calculated psychological strategy. The whole goal of that intense oceanic imagery is to induce a state called nibbida. Nibbida translates to a healthy detachment, or a profound weariness with the endless loop. Once you truly visualize the sheer exhausting scale of this repetitive cycle, your ego naturally just wants to step off the ride. It's the ultimate perspective shift, really. It turns existential dread into an incredibly practical mental tool for liberation. All right, Section 4, Warnings for Modern Society. Shifting gears a bit from the universe to human society, the text hits us with a brilliant piece of institutional critique. It outlines the severe, almost radioactive dangers of wealth, fame, and praise. It neutrally observes that even the most virtuous, totally well-intentioned individuals can have their moral foundations rotted right from the inside out by the institutional lure of societal clout and power. Now, what's really interesting about this is the ancient metaphor of the drum of Anaka. as this beautiful original drum cracked over time. Well-meaning people repaired it by driving in new wooden pegs. Well, eventually, the original wood vanished entirely. The drum looked the exact same from the outside, but its authentic sound was completely gone. This was a stunningly prophetic warning, right? It tells us that original truths will slowly be overwritten by beautiful but entirely hollow words. It is literally the ancient equivalent to our modern era of beautifully packaged fake news. And that brings us to Section 5, the compass of wisdom. When we map these ancient concepts directly onto our modern reality, the parallels are just undeniable. The ancient idea of an endless cycle of rebirth, well, that perfectly mirrors today's epidemic of existential burnout and endless doom scrolling. And the new pegs in the drum, that is the exact blueprint of modern misinformation. This proves that Theravada philosophy isn't just some passive belief system, it's a very active, highly critical thinking framework that we can use to evaluate the world right now. So what does this all mean for us today? We live in a world completely overwhelmed by algorithmic noise and constantly shifting narratives. The Nidāna Vagga reminds us that finding the root cause is really the only reliable compass we have. When you take the time to map out the specific mechanics behind your stress, your burnout, or even society's misinformation, you strip away the chaos. You're no longer just a victim of randomness. Which leaves us with one final pretty empowering thought. If all your suffering, your stress, and your confusion aren't random curses from the universe, but simply mechanical chain reactions just waiting to be dismantled, what single root cause will you choose to break today? Keep questioning the causes around you, and I'll see you in the next explainer.